Well, we got another Tuesday wrestling that we just passed by with both AEW Dark and Impact. So all of that starts right now on Deleted Wrestle Zone.
Are you ready? Get up, get up! 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 Get up, get up!
Welcome everybody to Deleted Wrestle Zone. All things pro wrestling from AEW, NXT, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Impact Wrestling, everything else. So I'm your host, J Rod here. So before I start with AEW and Impact Wrestling, I want to give you guys the update about Ring of Honor. They just announced that they are going back into TV production this month of August. Still unclear when, but they are trying to do the same old routine that any other promotion has done. Have no audience. Now, I know for a fact they're not going to be able to tour like they normally do. So there is a chance that they will film all of their content out in Baltimore, which is their home base exactly. So I can't wait to see how they're going to go with it. I'm sure if you guys are Ring of Honor fans, you should tune into that. So right now, let's get started with AEW Dark. All right, so right now we got AEW Dark. This is a huge stack of matches they had. It went up to over an hour and a half. So let's go from start to finish on this particular AEW Dark episode. First match is Lee Johnson versus Ray Phoenix. Now, if you guys have noticed or not, Lee Johnson is amongst those who is supportive, is part of MJS campaign staff, who is believing that he could beat Jon Moxley and be the AEW World Champion. He claims that he will be our champion. Well, he's not my champion. I'm more of the rebel type, or the guy who's fighting for the people. MJF only fights for himself. That's how I see it. But anyway, this match was very intriguing. Much I would have expected Ray Phoenix to finish him off quickly, but it didn't. There were some great shots that Lee Johnson did, but frankly, it's not enough for a guy like Ray Phoenix, so Ray Phoenix took the victory on this one. Next match, Alex Chambers versus Shawn Spears, along with Tully Blanchard. As we all know, that recently we've been seeing a lot of the aggressiveness with Shawn Spears ever since Tully gave him that black glove that made him be like this aggressive person that he's always been. But luckily, he did not have that glove loaded. Um, but he was able to, how do I say this, dismantle Alex Chamberlain, and it was total brutal. But he beat him completely. Post match, he decided to load up the glove and knock him out. Very sneaky stuff that he's been putting. Next match, we have an interesting tag team match. We have Mbadu teaming with the captain, Sean Dean, facing off the Gun Club. So it's Austin Gunn and his dad, the legendary Mr. Assman, Billy Gunn, teaming up. Now, this was a very unique match. Um, we haven't seen them yet on Dynamite, but I'm sure we can see them. But the one thing I like about it is Ace Austin's he's more compassionate. He loves doing what he does. He's a lot more different than his dad, but it's really cool how Austin has been now being more enthusiastic about what he does. And I'm very surprised how it is. But luckily for us, it ended with the Gun Club winning this match. So it's going to be awesome. Next match, we have, let's see. We have this guy named Michael Marvelous Stevens versus Superbad Kip Sabian along with Penelope Ford. But man, this one was very interesting. You see, this guy Michael, he was able to hold on his own. He was able to throw in some shots. Kip Sabian was a bit surprised, but not at all impressed as always by any of the jobbers they normally get. But this one was very interesting in my opinion. If you guys notice, Marvelous is not your ordinary type of wrestler. He's also openly gay. If you guys ever seen him, or if he is, I don't know. I don't know if it's a gimmick or anything, But if it is a gimmick, I'll be like, okay, makes perfect sense. But Kip Sabian win, but this time with no help of what's her name of Penelope Ford on this one. Next match, we have a interesting tag team match. We have Griff Garrison teaming with Brian Pillman Jr. taking on Private Party. This was a very interesting match. They have now changed a bit of their dynamic. If you guys noticed that there's always been spot for Private Party, but they managed to take it easy a bit, and they were able to pick up the victory with a very impressive win with one guy both sides of the ring and jump on top of Griff Garrison. So Private Party took the victory on this one. Next match we have a six-man tag team match. We have Pineapple Pete, Corey Hollis, and Aaron Solo versus the Jurassic Express. This was a very fun match. I love watching the Jurassic Express. When they're out and they're in the ring. I've been a big fan of them since they first formed together as a team. One thing I like is Marco's aggressive. He tried to do kind of like a Razor Ramon type Razor's Edge on Pineapple Pete, but man, I can't believe he did that. But frankly, Jurassic Express actually won this one as always, and I would love to see if they ever do a trios championship. My pick would be Jurassic Express on this one. Next match, we have the Hybrid 2 versus the Naturals Nightmares. If you guys recall, last week on AEW Dark, Jack Evans along with Angelico was facing against QT Marshall, but their interference committed. But the best part about this match is Dustin, we all know he's a veteran. There were some spots that he was able to avert from Jack Evans, but there was a spot in this one that was so funny. I enjoyed. Jack Evans kept blabbering his mouth as always, but what he did was stupid, where QT went underneath him and he tagged Dustin. It made me laugh. I'm like, what are you thinking? You brag too much. Pay attention to what your opponent is doing, but that's his own downfall. But luckily, it ended with the Natural Nightmares picking up the victory. I'm not sure if there's going to be a rivalry between both teams. Hopefully, if it is, this is going to be an interesting. Hopefully, they post this on Dynamite, which is something that's very interesting. Next match, we got a women's match. We have Rachel Ellering. If we mentioned her previously on the last episode, where she participated in the AEW Women's Tag Team Cup, is facing off against super bad girl Penelope Ford. This one was very amazing. Rachel put in a bit of the aggressiveness on this one, but Penelope Ford was able to avert every angle she could. She was able to take her out by doing the fisherman carrying press, whatever they call it. So she picked up the victory on this one. The next match was the main event. It was the Butcher and the Blade versus SCU. So I was a bit biased between these two teams because I wasn't sure how this one was going to play out. I mean, both teams are great, in my personal opinion, but great, amazing stuff with both teams. So in this one, the victory goes with the Butcher and the Blade. So hope you guys enjoy this one. So like I said, this particular episode of AEW Dark went about over an hour and a half. So right now, let's move on with Impact Wrestling right now. Alright, so let's start with Impact Wrestling. So it started out with the recap about Rich Swann. As you recall, a week ago, Rich Swann made the announcement that he has to retire due to his injury with the ankle that he obtained at first back in January. Then he made his triumphant return a couple weeks ago, but apparently what happened is Eric Young took it too far and hurt him some more. And then again, Eric Young did it. And then it just jumped in somewhere in the backstage area where Willie Mack is fighting Eric Young. Like they were brawling with each other. Willie Mack wants revenge for what Eric Young did. But they were scheduled to be in the match. As soon as the match was about to start, Eric Young said, no, it's my time. So he rather do it his way rather than what Impact Wrestling that is going on. But the match was pretty good. It was a really good rivalry. I'm not sure if they're going to continue on because, as you know, Eric Young's main focus is the Impact World Championship that's currently held by Eddie Edwards. So, but the way the match ended, Willie Mack got distracted thanks to the ref who did not like what he was about to do. So he put a chair right in his ankle. He was going to break it, but ref should just let him get away with it for once. But no. So Eric Young managed to take advantage of the distraction long enough for him to put him in the power drivers, and he won using the match. Next thing we see in the backstage, the Good Brothers are harassing many people within the backstage area. If you may recognize someone there, I'm talking about Matt Striker, who we haven't seen for a while, but luckily they didn't pick on him. They picked on someone else. The Good Brothers are still upset over what Ace Austin and Madman Fulton did a week ago. They sent Doc Gallows to jail for something he did not for something he did. They instigated a little feud between them because Ace Austin will not have liked the fact what they were doing, getting involved in his business. So they just left and continue searching for them. Then we jump in back to the Wrestle House again. Now, as you know, there's a bit of a love story between both Rosemary and Johnny E. Bravo. So it's still unclear what was happening. At the same time, while this happened, Taya was trying to be the leader in the house. Nobody knew what Susie was or Cousin Jake. It turns out that Cousin Jake and Susie were about to go on a date. Yeah, kind of bizarre. I mean, does Cousin Jake forget about who Susie really is underneath the that little innocent girl? I mean, we know who she is. And recently we've been seeing the one person we are expecting will show up. I'm talking about Su Young. So anyway, then we jump into Reno Scum found Rhino. So as you may or may not remembered, Hernandez actually paid Reno Scum to find Rhino and take him out and take back the money that he stole from him from a match that he took place a couple weeks ago. So they were able to take him out, and I'm not sure if this feud between both Rhino and Hernandez is going to continue on, but we'll see how that goes. Next match, we have the match in the Knockouts division. As you recall, a week ago, Kimberly approached Deonna Purrazzo with an offer she cannot refuse. She told her that if she takes out Jordynne Grace before anything else, she would like her to be her next opponent for the Impact Knockouts Championship, which Deonna Purrazzo, of course, agreed upon. So this match was more if Kimberly is able to defeat and take out Jordynne Grace, she gets a title shot. But man, she did a lot of great maneuvers, some counters, but of course you cannot match the power of Jordynne Grace. How she's a very strong individual. The way she was handling every submission that Kimberly has tried to put, but frankly, Jordynne Grace was able to put her in a submission and she tap out. So that means Jordynne Grace is now in the clear. She will face Deonna Purrazzo in Emergence in the first week, in the first night. So that's going to be in a week or two. I'm not 100% sure, but if I do find out, you'll know on the upcoming episodes for that one. Next thing we know, Madison Rayne, who of course was commentary with Josh Matthews, goes to locker room talk, and her guest is RVD and Katie Forbes, but it did not turn out exactly what Madison Rayne hoped for. It just turned into another porno flick type of event. But at the same time, Sami Callihan showed up looking for retribution for what RVD did a couple weeks ago, about a week ago or two, a week ago, where he wanted a chance to face Eddie Edwards for the title, but apparently RVD and Katie Forbes were still angry with him for what he did 2 weeks ago, where Katie Forbes was about to launch some photos of herself, her naughty, sexy pictures, but of course, Sami hacked. But of course, Katie Forbes put some stuff on Sammy's eyes. But this rivalry between both RVD and Sammy Callahan is far from over. RVD thinks he's smart, but Sammy Callahan will find a way to outsmart him. That I can guarantee. Next match, well, not a match, but we see a little segment with the Radicals. You see Dez and Wentz talking, and out of nowhere, here comes Suicide. In fact, it wasn't Suicide, it was Trey. So he just took his mask, just for fun. But as soon as all that happened, Moose shows up, sees Wentz wearing a free EC3 sweater. Now, as you know, Moose has had it with EC3. He doesn't want nothing to do with them or anything, but Wentz told him, I just saw the sweater right there on that day he attacked you, and I just took it because it was good. So, Moose gives the invitation for someone to face him for the TNA World Title. And of course, Trey was wearing Suicide's mask. Moose, this one made me laugh. Moose thought Suicide was with them, but in fact, that was Trey. So he accidentally did not realize that he gave the invitation to Trey. I don't know what he was thinking. I mean, Moose is really out there. He really was dumb enough not to notice. Then we see back to the Wrestle House. As you know, Rosemary is still trying to understand. Now, Crazy Steve, on the other hand, they both had something in the past when they were known as Decay. Crazy Steve said this whole thing will become a jealousy war. As you know, as much as Taya was looking for the attention, now she has no interest being arrested with Johnny Bravo. Just wants someone to take care of her, to look after her. But Rosemary wants something more out of Johnny Bravo. So what she did is cast a little spell on Larry D, one half of Triple XL. And then all of a sudden they set up for a match between both members of Triple XL. But at the same time, Susie and Cousin Jake go on their date. Susie went running, all this and that. But the match between AC Romero and Larry D was kind of interesting. If you guys never seen AC how he wrestles, you'd be surprised for a guy his size. So it ended with AC winning. Now, Deonna Purrazzo set up a little video message to Jordynne Grace, giving her a proposition. She decided that for a stipulation match for this one, she wants to make this the first ever Iron Man knockouts match. If you guys aren't familiarized with an Iron Man match, that type of match is where you make the most pins. And she made it up to a 30-minute knockout for a match. So basically, they have 30 minutes to make enough consecutive pins as possible. Now, if they were unable to do it in 30 minutes, but also, unless someone makes one pin, that's the winner. So this is going to be a very interesting match. It's going to take place at Emergence soon. As you know, the rivalry between the Motor City Machine Guns and the North is now becoming more escalated. The North are still pissed off, saying that they were not 100% after retaining the titles at Slammiversary against Shamrock and Sammy Callahan. So basically, the North were still upset. They hate hearing this part where the Motor City Machine Guns beat them, but in fact they did. The North felt they were still being disrespected, not recognizing that they beat everyone in the in TNA for almost a year, and they believe they cash in their rematch clause. They will take place in Reemergence, but Motor City Machine Guns are like not too worried because they know they're coming back for the titles, so why should they? But the North will not be, how do I say, will not let this pass them, knowing that they lost against a team who they felt they are the thing of the past and they are the future. So it's always been like that. But sometimes when you got guys like the Motor City Machine Guns, they are what the tag team division was all about back then. Today they haven't been like that, even if the North says it. As we all know, we jump into a women's knockouts tag team match. We have a no disqualification match between Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz versus Nevaeh and Havoc. Basically, this has become much of a hardcore match between both teams. At first, I thought this would be in the favor of Nevia and Havoc, but somehow this match ended up on the favor of Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz. They used a lot of things. Havoc went through a chair and all this and that. So basically, Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz still picked up the victory. But of course, the still question remains: will Impact Wrestling bring back the Knockouts Tag Team Championships? That's something that's also been talked about. I have mentioned this before on either my podcast or on the channel. So we'll see when that happens. And then we jump into the Good Brothers are still looking for Ace Austin and Madman Fulton. Like I said, they're not happy what happened the last time. So they continued on searching. Now while that happened, we jump into Moose. Moose was minding his own business, telling EC3 shows up. Well, not physically, more like a holograph type, telling him what's his intentions, that he has nothing personal against him, but he wants to destroy his past. Basically, that title that he holds, he's not going to let that be standing. So basically, Moose may be starting to realize this was not about jealousy. This is not about him wanted jealousy when he had for the Feast and Fire. I think Moose has to recognize now this has nothing to do with either of them. This is about destroying the past of EC3. And the only thing that remains from his past is the title that Moose carries. Now, my opinion, Moose is going to be very vigilant on this one, completely. So he just gave him the warning. So next we have a match between Suicide and Dez. Now the match was going great until the Good Brothers showed up, demanding Ace Austin and Madman Fulton to show up, but they weren't there. So basically, they made it perfectly clear that they will face them on their time, on their terms, at Emergence, which, of course, the Good Brothers have no problems with. So they were willing to face them on Emergence, and I believe that's going to be somewhere in night 1, which is possibly this week or so. But I'll let you guys know when that happens. Now, for your Impact Plus flashback moment of the week, this one was for the TNA World Title years ago, maybe 3 or 4. It's between, by then, the previous champion, who was now the current champion, Eddie Edwards, facing against Cody for the TNA, for the Impact World Title. And this was a very interesting match. Many fans were voting for Cody, but the match went to Eddie Edwards, which was pretty cool. Then we have Rohit Raju talking with Chris Bay. Now, they are under impression that they believe that TJP has no interest of going for the TNA, for the X Division Championship. We all know that TJP and Fallah are interested in getting the tag team championships, but they don't believe that. They believe that maybe TJP wants to talk, but we'll just wait and see what's going to happen. But Rohit Raju had an interesting proposition for Chris. Put him and Chris Bay along with TJP as in a triple threat. Basically, it'll be a 2-on-1 scenario, and of course, it'll give Chris Bay the chance to win the match. But I had that feeling that Rohit did that just to get into Chris's head. I'm not sure, but we'll see what happens. But it will take place at Emergence. Then we move on to Brian Myers. We do know he is scheduled to be there. We just don't know when. Then we go back to the Wrestle House. Susie and Cousin Jake's day turned to the worst. Apparently, Su Yung is started to reappear again. It's still only a matter of time until Su Yung rearrange her ugly face again. So things don't go well. So later, Susie tells Alicia, who set up the date, saying that she's a bad influence on. So they set up in the match, and Crazy Steve was the ref, and of course the winner was Susie. And because of that, Susie reminded Taya Valkyrie that Kylie Ray is the number one contender for the Knockouts division, and Taya doesn't want to face Kylie Ray, and she decided, I'm going to face you next week. Next match we have, the final match is the main event, the Open Challenge for the Impact World Championship, Eddie Edwards, and he called out Eric Young, for this one. But of course, we had a surprise visit from Brian Myers. This one was a very interesting match. It felt like Brian Myers hasn't missed a step, not since he was released from his previous employers. You guys know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about um, WWE. They even mentioned Matt Cardona. They didn't mention the promotion he's currently in right now for the five parents deal that he did. So it's kind of interesting. He even promoted his podcast that he does with Matt Cardona. But the match was amazing. But there was a moment where Eddie Edwards hurt his knee, but they weren't sure if he'd be able to put the Boston knee party onto Brian. But he was able to do that, and he picked up the victory, retained the title. But the real question is, who will be the next challenger for that title? That's yet to be seen at this point. My money is either RVD or the obvious Eric Young. So there's a lot of people that want that title. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Hope there'll be more to coming up. So stay tuned for the following episode with the Wednesday Night War. Also pay attention to my podcast if you guys haven't seen them yet. So right now, about to bid all of you adieu. So goodbye, and have a nice day. Bang.